Welcome, everybody. I'm David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT, and this here podcast, Next TMT Talks, here with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, to talk about all things technology, media, and telecom. And lots happening this week between CES and the Golden Globes and like stuff. Little major mergers and acquisitions deal continues to rock along, and so much else, including Versant's bumpy debut, while former corporate cousins NBC Universal prepare for a legendary February. Brendan Carr's little attended Gab Fest at CES, the coolness of Apple Vision Pro's new Lakers immersive telecast, live telecast, Stranger Things, the gift that keeps giving, conspiracy theories and fan engagement, but also the real reason Netflix needs to buy Warner Brothers. Speaking of which, the Globes themselves were what we probably expected, but there were people who actually got pretty excited about winning, and it was a good night for Netflix, Warner Brothers, and Sony, who often sells things to Netflix. So let's get into it, Dan. Let's start. You look none the worse for wear somehow, some way, from your sojourn in Las Vegas during the biggest show on earth, or at least the biggest show in a place that's big on big shows, Las Vegas, for a Consumer Electronics Show. How was it? The thing we talked a little bit at midweek in our new partnership with Media Play News. But let's get into just a tiny bit, particularly because Brendan Carr had not gotten up on a stage yet, and you were there. So what'd you see?
Where we left off, we were talking a lot about agentic AI, which is different from generative AI. Agentic AI is AI that can do stuff in the real world.
It's empowered AI, really. It's like not just asking questions, but like saying, go do things and let me know how it goes, basically.
Right. If this is the AI that will replace you, if you're a ad buyer or account executive at a studio, this is a real threat. So we talked at length about that. You can refer to our last newsletter and podcast if you'd like to hear that illuminating discussion.
Our not so special edition, right?
Oh, it was really special.
In its own way, not so special.
But we have a lot of self-esteem, to be honest, both David and I.
Yeah.
So we woke up the next day and headed to the west wing of the sprawling Las Vegas Convention Center.
Brand new West Hall, right? I mean, that's the one that's the newest one, right?
Right. It's
pretty good.
Premium parking because I didn't want to be late. I thought there would be standing room only to see the celebrity FCC chairman who, love him or hate him, he is the most polarizing, most spicy, caliente FCC chairman we've ever had.
Well, I do want to just take slight disagreeing with you, because there have been previous FCC chairmen who have stirred it up, and I'm not going to throw out their names at this point because that really expects more of my brain at this point in the weekend and really my life than reason.
Powell, who was like his father was a statesman and he came in with some pedigree, but he was
Michael Powell was fine, but the guy after him was and the FTC has had bigger controversial people. They had the FTC chairman up there too, right? So that person not as big a lightning rod.
I don't know if we've ever seen a guy insert himself into so many sort of zeitgeisty conversations.
That's probably true.
That's my point. Anyway, he's controversial. I thought it would be standing room only. Certainly, I saw Michael Powell speak a few times, and it was NCTA and a bunch of other events, and it was packed. But there was, the thing was a third full. It was a room. I checked,
and it wasn't that big a room, right? I mean, it was like 180 people or something kind of room.
Everybody was disengaged, checking their phones. Nobody booed or hissed. Nobody cheers were really kind of milquetoast. And Gary Shapiro, the head of the Consumer
Technology Association.
Okay. He's the big concho. He's done that job for a while. Fawned all over the guy. He can do no wrong. And it wasn't
just remember, Gary Shapiro is a lobbyist first. That's his job. So sucking up to regulators is literally the first line in his job description. So that he was fawning on him, I'm not going to ding him for that because that's kind of what you're required to do. But it does get a little obsequious pretty quickly, right?
He did an excellent job. Let's just put it that way.
He's been doing it a long time. He's got obsequious down. I'm just saying.
No, Brendan Carr did an excellent job of making everything sound like a policy discussion in regards to spectrum, in regards to broadcast networks licensing broadcast spectrum. But if you read between the lines and you follow them a lot, it was pretty politicized. The power has to be redistributed in terms of the broadcast business. The national networks have too much power, and they're forcing content that Americans don't want down the throats of local stations. We need to power local broadcasters. We need to give wireless spectrum to satellite guys for this exciting new technology, satellite to cell phones. It was all there. But afterwards, there wasn't a phalanx of security came out. He talked to people. My colleague Dade Hayes at Variety, yours too, a former colleague, he chased him down, got a quote. He wasn't a rock star. He was easily accessible.
Right. Well, the thing the bit there that I'm interested in that caught my ear, what you were talking about, was trying to shift that power between the national networks and the companies that pay money to get programming from the networks to put on their local former printing presses that are no longer quite that. And it's interesting. So if you want more power, and I'm a network, maybe I mean, again, I think back to Laura Martin's in your face proposal back in the Jimmy Kimmel controversy last summer. She said, Disney should just drop these schmucks, these yokels, these losers, and just start running it on ABC.com and Disney Plus, and let them go figure out what the programming they're going to do. And it's like,
I mean, you should say that
yeah,
because you challenged broadcast networks. We license you this microphone and you have to speak to the public interest. And if you don't want to do that, you're free to start a cable channel or a podcast or a YouTube channel. Go for it.
well, but there's no FCC licensing for the network in the same way that there are for the broadcast stations. Isn't that correct?
I'm
I mean,
not sure.
they could go and then just turn it into a streaming service, and the FCC would have no power over it.
That's true.
And I'm sure they would try to exert it, but they really wouldn't have. Anyway, that being said, it suggests there may be an ongoing conversation about that, even as Nexstar and Sinclair are rolling up smaller station groups and pleading their case for more power to take on. Good luck on this one, Chris Ripley. Take on YouTube TV and Apple TV and all the rest. It's like, yeah, it's going to work out. That being said,
There was no haymakers. There's nothing that we haven't heard before. Like I said, the thing that stood out was the lack of interest. I just couldn't believe that 148,000 people attended CES. It was our best turnout post-pandemic. And this is
none of them care. None of them. Yeah. Well, all right. Just because we want to make sure our audience still cares, let's move on. Same day you and virtually only you were listening to Brandon Carr and his FTC colleague talk to a nearly empty room in Las Vegas. Versant, or as you'd like to say it because you are French,
What's wrong?
has publicly debuted as an independent company. Yeah. And they promptly on Friday, it was a pretty good market day, but their stock promptly dropped, I think, 17%. So the capacity and interest for that is not quite what it was, but they came out saying, hey, we're going to be a strong, well-funded, financially stable. We're throwing off lots of cash. They are rumored to be one of the companies, maybe the infamous Company C in Warner Brothers Discovery's takedown of the limitations of the Paramount Skydance proposal that proposed to buy all of the Discovery Global Networks division for $25 billion. Maybe it's them, maybe it's private equity, but that would be not a surprise if it was them, because those go together pretty well, I think. But they're out there, they're hunting, they're looking for deals. Maybe it's AMC Networks, maybe it's some other things, but I think more to come from that.
I looked at their investor day last month, and I thought it was kind of an impressive presentation.
Yeah.
It's these brands are down, they're a bit broken, but some of them can be restored into other things, fast channels, whatever. And they have some interesting
Sci-fi should be like a no-brainer, right? You should be able to do something with that. That should be 10 zillion fast channels and something somewhere. Given the genre, the fans out there, you got to be able to do something with that, for God's sakes.
It was
Maybe not USA, but
it was
they
a
got
bad week for cable in general, cable programmers trying to reclaim momentum. The erstwhile Bally sports channels are struggling again. They're now FanDuel.
Right. All 9 Major League Baseball teams that were still on the Bally. It's not Bally anymore. It's FanDuel. FanDuel. So they all said, thanks, but no thanks. We've got a season coming in a couple of months. Hard to believe, but we're almost there already. And they just said, no, no
Yeah,
thanks.
2-year fight for stability in bankruptcy court, and here we are
Yeah.
again. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
crazy.
And that's going on. Meanwhile, Versant's former corporate cousins, NBC Universal, are preparing for what they blithely call a legendary February. They sold out all the Winter Olympics in Milan Cortina. As somebody who has been in Milan in the last 2 years and really enjoyed it, I'm going to bet this is going to be a banging fun little Winter Olympics where you to be going on NBC Universal's dime. They are sold out. They've got all these special ad products that they're selling out at rates far higher than what they had in Paris 2 years ago, where they really kind of got they got it figured out at Paris, right? Well, now they're figuring it out plus 20% better in terms of wringing dollars out of advertisers and all the rest. And they've also sold out the NBA All-Star game and the Super Bowl. It could be a pretty good a pretty good quarter for
Does Comcast
Comcast.
have a Super?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and they sold that out, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, whenever it was, a while ago. Oh, they put out a news release saying this will be a legendary, and they had
Buffalo
capitalized,
first quarter.
legendary February. And Bafo's
Wow.
really only Variety talking about box office. This is not them, and no one's talking about the movies that Donald Langley's putting out in February. No one's going to watch because they're all going to be watching TV on NBC Universal, on the NBC side of Universal.
Yeah, that's an impressive live event month.
Yeah,
Quarter's going to rain money.
yeah, gonna rain, or yeah, it's gonna technically it's gonna snow money because this is the Winter Olympics, so it's gonna be coming down in little unique snowflakes of probably cryptocurrency, but that's just my guess.
I'm not a Europhile like you are, but when I think of Milan, I don't think of winter sports wonderland.
Well, the thing you forget about, Milan is in the Po River Valley, and it's the great breadbasket and the great industrial center for Italy in the north there. But 45 minutes away is Lake Como, tucked between the Alps. There's snow there from pretty early to pretty late, and Switzerland dips down in these little fingers, like parts of Italy go up and parts of Switzerland go down on that whole southern border because of mountains. And so it's Switzerland, which we do think about for snow and downhill and skiing and all that. Though Cortina, I looked this up, is actually in the Dolomites to the east, over like straight north of Venice. So it's in the northeast, way up there in
I
the
may have
northeast.
waylaid us here. I may have
Yeah,
just
we
down
way
a
late. That being said, they're going to snow money. Let's pivot right here because I spent some time Friday night. I donned my Apple Vision Pro, incredibly expensive, but incredibly capable.
Yeah, I was envious.
My incredibly capable immersive face computer and Spectrum charter-owned Spectrum Sportsnet, which it co-owns with the Lakers, has a new app on the service. They are going to be showing a handful of games this year in immersive experience. And so really cool. So they got one mega camera sitting on the scores table right at half court, 2 feet from the inbound line. And that can see almost all the court except those little coffin corners at each end. And then they have one attached to the standards, the goal standards at about 9 feet. And they switch back and forth. There were definitely some bumps and stuff.
The two corners on your sidelines.
Yeah,
basically.
on your near sidelines. Yeah. So you couldn't see that. It's like a couple of feet, but that's where the sharpshooters, that's a higher percentage
That's an important
three-point
spot.
shot. It's a little bit closer than out front. So a lot of the guys that can really shoot, they like to go in those corners. So you go, oh, there's somebody waving at them on defense. So there's got to be somebody there. Look, there's the shot. But I got to tell you, my respect for the speed, the power, the hops. I mean, also the speed again, because man, these guys are huge and they are zipping by you and flipping balls and doing flush dunks. And I mean, it is like, oh my God. I mean, this is a little bit like what it's like to spend $2,000 a ticket to sit on the courtside seats. And
That,
it's
like,
great.
I wouldn't pay that.
Well, you and I would not because that's pretty much like our GDP. But that being said, this is a lot cheaper than that. And they're going to be doing more. The next one's going to be February 5th, I think, against Philadelphia. But even people who are not in the Lakers catchment zone, it's both on the Spectrum Sportsnet app that's now on there, and the NBA.com app. And it was on Friday night only available in the Lakers, footprint, their backyard. But now it's available. The replay should be up and available. And they promise in the future that they'll have replays and highlights in immersive available within 24 hours after the games. So this
So,
is cool.
for a playoff game that I don't know how big a Laker fan you are. I know you like the Trojans like I do, but the Lakers are my
I like the
jam.
Lakers. Yeah, I grew up a man without an NBA team because other than the St. Louis Spirit, there was nothing in the Midwest that to root for. That was the ABA's team for a few years before it imploded. And I was only in Boston or close to Boston long enough to in their couple of bad years before they got burned, which is why they got burned because they had a couple of bad years.
Oh, if it was a playoff game, would you like prefer this over the standard broadcast?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a dedicated broadcasting pair, a local Fox 11 newscaster who's perfectly solid, and then Danny Green, a longtime veteran NBA player who's pretty smart, but he's pretty good, and he's on the regular Lakers newscast, and that'll get better. The real issue, I think, was some of the production values. Like you could see the score if they remembered to tell you, look down at your feet, because it was like way down, actually off the court, the score and stuff. Thankfully, most of the time before they told me that, halfway through the second quarter, I could see a scoreboard somewhere up above me, and it was sharp enough because these are 4K lenses. I could see a scoreboard to tell me, oh, it's 27-22 or whatever. But some of the production values, the replays were very brief. They didn't really do them initially, and they started doing more of them. They weren't so good about switching initially. Like the first 4 minutes of the game, they were just on the mid-court thing. I was like, oh, come on, you can do more than this. And they finally started switching back and forth. And when they switch back and forth, because these games zip back and forth, and you've got to switch to keep up with that.
Regular Sportsnet broadcast has Stu Lance, and I forget the name of the play-by-play guy.
Bill McDonald, I think.
Are they
Isn't it Billy Mack?
No, I think you're right.
No, they are not. This is a separate guys talking. I mean, you could put on the radio broadcast, I guess, and get John Ireland and Michael, what's his
Thompson.
name? Michael Thompson. You could do that, and that's people do that in the playoffs all the time, right? But they'll get that figured out. I'm not really worried about them. The experience of seeing these guys like this, full size, and how physically imposing and incredibly athletic and fast is really something. So,
yeah, the game has gotten, in terms of athleticism and explosiveness, these guys are just genetically, it's just the advancement in years has been startling.
And I will say that's part of what I like about the WNBA game, because it's not quite as explosive. There are players who can dunk, but most can't. There's the first 7-footers in that game now, but mostly they're playing a slightly, it's a less explosive game, a very cerebral game, I think. And they're very talented and skill-based game, not just
you have to use the fundamentals and cutting and traditional basketball moves.
Yeah, and that matters with the NBA too. But I mean, it's a different game, at least for now, because women are catching up. But
yeah, just like
I really
NBA,
appreciate it.
And realize this game is, what is the WNBA? 25, 30 years old.
But they're in the middle. By the way, they're in the middle of teetering on a work stoppage because they can't come to terms on. I think it's going to be a collective bargaining,
which has
their contract's about to run out, and they're stuck on some key things about the salary cap and all that stuff. Because the women want to get paid. They should get paid. They're generating a lot of money. You look at the value of the new franchise fees, and you look at the sponsors jumping in and all that. They want a piece of that too. They don't want to have to go play in the off season in some place like Russia and end up like Brittany Griner, right? So totally get it. But that's out there. We'll see if they can avoid a work stoppage. I do want to pivot to Netflix, which had both a very good night tonight in the Golden Globes, and there's still a little bit to go, but the K-pop Demon Hunters won the stuff. It's not eligible for the Oscars, but it won Best Song for Golden, and it won a Best Animated Show, both of which it would win in the Oscars if it were eligible, but because it was released on Netflix originally, it won't be eligible. Sony,
I
which made that.
discussion of some heated nature that you and I had over email today. I'll just confess to the audience. Why does it matter when we have no idea how these things are even determined? I mean, we switch.
Well, they got 300 members now, which is better than the 88 they used to have. Fine, whatever. It's no worse than the Critics' Choice Awards, which are trying to get stuff. And for what it's worth, for those people who care about these Oscars, the whole Oscar season, the Golden Globes have been, I think somewhat improbably, a pretty good indicator of who's going to be in play during Oscar season.
That's
Oscar
true.
nominations come, they don't come out for another, I think, 10 days or something. So it ends up being better than Iowa in the presidential race, the Iowa primary. It's a better indicator. It's a more reliable one. And so for that part, it's interesting. To me, what's interesting is to kind of get a sense of the temperature of the town. There's a lot of conversation in the Nikki Glaser monologue and elsewhere about, keep movies in theaters. Movies should be made for theaters and seen in theaters, da da da. There's a lot of conversation. Ted Sarandos got a shout out from Seth Rogen for The Studio, which Seth Rogen made, and had a Golden Globe. He said, I made a fake one of these, and now here I am winning an award for it. And he thanked Sarandos, who was there and smiling. And that was kind of hilarious, right? But then they also, Warner Brothers, did very well for One Battle After Another, a terrific film from Paul Thomas Anderson, who won screenwriting and directing, and is clearly a favorite going into Oscar season to win for those, for One Battle After Another.
Well, it's no Max like experience.
Yeah, it's really good. But the important thing is that Anderson, to his credit, noted that several other people had gotten up on stage and mentioned Michael DeLuca, who with Pam Abdi have been running the Warner Brothers movie operation and have had a pretty great year. They did Sinners, they did Weapons, they did the Minecraft movie, they did One Battle After Another. They distributed for Apple the F1 the movie, and which made $630 million worldwide. I mean, they've had a pretty good year. And he noted that. And it's interesting to see what happens to Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi in whatever deal comes down, because that's going to matter to this town a lot. DeLuca's got a lot of fans. Abdi's right there with him. And of course, the woman doesn't get as much credit, but she's right there with him.
You'll land on your feet. They'll land on their feet. They'll be fine.
Well, they will land on their feet, but I got to think, I mean, if they actually do what Sarando says they're going to do, which is kind of keep it as a separate unit, you just keep those guys over there, put out 15 movies a year, don't blow through your budgets, create art that make everybody happy, and we'll figure it out.
So
That's
how did the Pit do? Speaking of Warner Brothers Discovery,
Noah Wyle won again for Best Actor. He won, and the show won. I don't know what won.
Well, they were nominations, so I don't know.
Yeah. They had a few nominations, but they won a ton of Emmys back in the fall. The new season just started.
Season 2 premiere?
I haven't gotten there yet, but intend to. It was funny. Nikki Glaser said, "Thank you, Noah Wyle, for being the only doctor I've seen regularly for the last 35 years," which says something about her health care. But she is a stand-up comedian, so no shock. But he won and gave a very gracious speech.
It's their intro has been tweaked. And I wrote about this. Yeah. He rides in on a motorcycle. He's following this pickup truck with American flag. It's almost like they're trying to broaden out the audience a little bit, make it a little red state.
Communicate a little something modestly, subtly, but communicate something. It's Pittsburgh. It's a very blue-collar town. The Steelers are everything there. And so I thought that was actually good that they did that. And all those people working in the emergency room, yes, there are doctors, and yes, they have very high levels of education, but there's a lot of working class people working in those and taking care of patients who are very working class in a hospital like that. So it is right up there with Tony Dokapil's plea that he's going to just talk to more just plain folks. Well, in that regard,
I think this is why Tracker's so wildly successful, because it has a kind of middle of the road aesthetic that just seems to work for everybody. He
Right,
drives a
right.
big,
It's a four quadrant kind of thing. Yeah.
he's kind of, metrosexual looking, I guess, a little bit. He's very clean cut, and there's kind of every episode is apolitical and fast paced, and in terms of the
Right.
pit, it's they pick just fantastic young actors, and have a formula.
The extended cast on that thing is people come in and out it's hour by hour over a single day. And the core cast is fantastic. The woman who plays the charge nurse there is fantastic. Lanasa, I think is her name, and she's terrific and should get more attention. But it's got pace. That is absolutely true. Speaking of things with pace or not, Stranger Things, I thought, wrapped up on New Year's Eve with
Oh,
the final episode of the fifth season. And it turns out, no, fans dissatisfied with the 37 different endings that were shown over 2+ hours by the Duffer Brothers in their final episode said there needed to be more stuff wrapped up. And they came up with this conformity gate theory that there was going to be another episode dropping a week later, episode 9. Turns out, not so, but a behind the scenes documentary came out and they're going to have a spinoff. But to me, the thing that was interesting about that is this shows why a franchise can be so powerful because it can still generate huge amounts of fan engagement even after things are done, right? They're coming up and pouring through stills from various, like on this bookshelf, this thing, and over here. And did she really die or did she die? All this stuff. And that's going to just keep up. And I find that really interesting. And that's actually interesting in terms of some of the stuff. There was a guy named Doug Shapiro, who is a former strategy exec at Warner Brothers, who now writes a newsletter called The Mediator.
It's not Shapiro,
And it's not
because they get very offended, the Shapiros, if you.
It is not a Shapiro, as far as I know. But what he doesn't have a way to pronounce it. There's no pronunciation guide. So Doug Shapiro. But his point, and I think it's really good, is Netflix must buy Warner Brothers because we are shifting from an era where, as the Netflix guys famously said, our biggest competition to get you to watch another show is sleep.
Right.
Right. To a new era where our biggest competition is infinite monkeys, as he puts it, which is kind of like that whole, if you had an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite number of typewriters tapping away, they'd write all of Shakespeare's work. Well, it's not necessarily going to be Shakespeare's work coming out, but AI will send the cost of content production to zero. It will have this vast explosion of stuff, most of which is useless, but it's also free or virtually free. So you have to have something people will want to watch, that they will stop and leave behind free slop to go watch, to pay for through a subscription or ads or what, with their time, and go watch. The infinite monkeys are coming for all of Hollywood. Can you justify your costs when your competition is stupid, free, and widely available? And I think that's a really big question. So, anyway.
Yeah, did the next Netflix sizzle reel that came out this week for the 2026
Yeah, it
slate?
looks good. I mean, they got plenty of stuff. I mean, they're hitting it, and if they get to plug in Warner Brothers, they'll have stuff. They'll have reasons to ignore the monkeys for a little while and watch Otter Things or whatever it's going to be called, the next whatever it is. But mostly they'll be exploiting many of those really interesting franchises that Warner Brothers has developed over the last century of existence. So lots of DC, I'm sure, lots of really interesting stuff from the HBO library and so on and so forth. So there was a mention of another mayor of Easttown that Jean Smart apparently said something as she was walking up on stage that she'd be open to. It was a limited series, you man. Remember, it won a whole bunch of awards a few years ago. It was great. Yeah, it was great. Kate Winslet's fantastic Task, which is by the same guys as they're set in the same general area of Eastern Pennsylvania, um, is the HBO show that came out a couple, 3 months ago. So, I mean, this is going to be really interesting to see how this works out, I think. And with that, probably we should wrap this puppy up. We've gotten into lots of stuff. I am David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT and Next TMT Talks. With my co-founder, Daniel Frankel. You can subscribe, like, share, repost, do all kinds of cool things with it. You can sign up if you're just randomly getting this. You can sign up at nexttmt.com to get our weekly newsletter free in your mailbox every Monday morning with all kinds of fantastic, brilliant, snarky goodness about telecom, media, and technology, or technology, media, and telecom, depending on your preferences.
Somebody said that to me recently. I don't think we're snarky. I think we
It's my
bring a fair
ambition.
amount of respect to these
respect is overwrought anyway.
Admiration.
With all that, we'll wrap this thing. Thank you so much.
Screw